I never thought the walls of my own home would one day feel like a prison. That night after I caught them together, I didn't just cry. I sobbed. I pressed my pillow to my face so they wouldn't hear me, and I let my grief spill out until my chest ached. Every memory of my marriage played in my mind like a cruel movie: the day we met, the day we married, the day I held our son for the first time. I thought about how we struggled together when we had nothing, how we promised each other that as long as we had love, we could survive anything. Was it all a lie? I remembered nights when I had stayed awake sewing clothes, just so we could pay the bills. I remembered working in the blistering sun, carrying heavy baskets, my back aching while he promised that one day we would own a beautiful house and grow old together. And we did. Except the man who stood by me then was not the man who stood in my house now. He had become someone I no longer recognized, someone who looked at me like I was an inconvenience, an obstacle to his happiness. Days passed like this. I would wake up to the sound of laughter coming from the living room, their laughter. I stopped cooking for them. I stopped speaking to them. I became a ghost in my own home, eating silently in my room, washing my own dishes, walking on eggshells to avoid their stares. One night, as I lay in bed, I remembered something my mother told me when I was a young girl. When people show you they do not value you, child, do not beg them to. Step back and show them what they've lost. That thought stayed with me, burning like an ember. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at my own reflection. The woman staring back at me had gray hair, tired eyes, and deep lines carved into her face. But there was still a spark there, a spark they hadn't managed to kill. I decided that day I would not let them win. I started small. I called my lawyer. I visited the bank. I checked every legal document related to the house, even the smallest receipt. Every night, when they thought I was asleep, I made phone calls. I started documenting everything. Weeks passed, but I didn't let my anger consume me. I kept my voice calm, my face neutral, even when they threw insults at me. I smiled politely. I cleaned my room. I acted like I didn't care. But inside, I was building a storm. Then came the perfect moment. My son returned from his business trip, and before they could poison him against me, I invited him for tea, just the two of us. I told him everything, gently, my voice shaking. His face turned pale. He didn't say much, just held my hand and promised me that he trusted me. That night, I slept a little easier, because I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my son's respect, for the family name, for everything I had sacrificed to build. And so I did what they least expected. I sold the house. But I didn't just sell it, I made sure the sale closed quickly. In cash, so they had no way to stop it. The day I handed over the keys was the most satisfying day of my life. I watched my husband's face turn red with rage. Watched the woman who had once called me mom cry and plead. Watched their pride crumble into dust. They packed their belongings in silence. And I smiled. As they left, I didn't shout. I didn't curse them. I simply said, "You tried to take my life from me, but I took back what was mine. Now go and remember this day every time you think you can destroy a woman like me." When the door closed behind them, I walked through every empty room one last time. I touched the walls, the windows, the kitchen counters. I thanked the house for sheltering me, for witnessing my pain, for giving me the strength to fight back. Then I walked out into the sunlight.com. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a prisoner. I felt like a warrior who had just won her last battle. After they were gone, I sat down on the porch step and let the afternoon sun warm my face. For a long time, I didn't move. I listened to the sound of the neighborhood children playing, a dog barking somewhere down the street, the faint hum of a car passing by. It felt like the world had kept turning while my own had been shattered and rebuilt. I thought about the girl my son had married, how she had smiled at me on her wedding day, hugging me tightly, calling me her second mother. How I had given her my own earrings as a blessing. And then I thought of the night I found her in my bed in my house with the man I had shared my life with. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. And I realized that this was why I had fought so hard to take everything back. It wasn't about money, or property, or even revenge. It was about respect. When you spend your life building something, you do not simply hand it over to the first person who disrespects you. You do not let them turn your life into ashes while they laugh in the next room. That night, I slept in a motel room with nothing but a suitcase. Yet, I felt lighter than I had in years. I dreamed of the past of the day we bought that house. I remembered how my husband had carried me over the threshold, laughing like a young fool, while I blushed like a bride again. I remembered the first meal I cooked there. The night my son took his first steps on that kitchen floor. The Christmas mornings we spent around that fireplace. And in the dream, I saw all those memories, like they were little candles. One by one, I blew them out. When I woke, I knew it was time to move forward. I rented a small cottage on the edge of town. It wasn't much to rooms and a porch that faced a field of wildflowers, but it felt like mine. I planted flowers outside, painted the walls myself, hung old photographs of my parents. For weeks, I stayed quiet, rebuilding myself piece by piece. Then one afternoon, my son came to visit. He looked tired, older somehow, as if the truth of what happened had finally sunk into his bones. He sat on my porch, holding a cup of tea I had made him, staring at the ground for a long time before he spoke. "Mom," he said finally, his voice heavy, "I didn't want to believe you. I didn't want to believe that Dad could do something like that. Or that she could betray me like that." He swallowed hard, then looked up at me with wet eyes. "But you were right. I saw the messages. I saw everything. And I am so sorry." I reached out and placed my hand over his. "You don't have to apologize to me, son," I said softly. "You didn't betray me, but you must learn from this. Never allow anyone to make you choose between what is right and what is easy. And never let anyone treat your home, your family, like something they can take apart whenever they please." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. That was the moment I felt something lift from my chest. I had my son back. Not long after, I heard that my husband and my son's ex-wife had broken up. I don't know the details, and I don't want to. Some things are better left in the past, where they belong. I have no anger left for them, only pity. Because I survived, I rebuilt, and they are still out there, lost, searching for something they will never find because they destroyed the one place that could have given them peace. And every evening, when I sit on my porch with the sunset painting the sky gold, I whisper a quiet thank you. For my strength, for my freedom, for the fire that betrayal lit inside me, the fire that saved me. I remember the first time I saw your grandfather. It was a late summer afternoon, and I was walking home from the market, carrying a basket of fresh vegetables. He was standing by his truck, sleeves rolled up, grease on his hands from working all day. He had that smile, that wide, warm smile, the kind that could melt every worry from your heart. He offered me a ride home, and I refused, of course. Back then, a proper young woman didn't accept rides from strangers. But the next day, he showed up again, this time waiting by the well near my house. "Just making sure you got home safe yesterday," he said with a laugh. That was how he was: persistent, gentle, patient. It took him 3 months to win my heart, but when he did, he became my whole world. We married in that little church at the edge of town, with nothing but a borrowed dress, 2 rings we could barely afford, and a dream of building a life together. And build we did. I suppose I missed the signs at first, the long nights out, the excuses, the way heads suddenly seemed distant even when sitting right beside me. I thought it was just age, or maybe stress. But then came her. At first, I loved her like my own daughter. She was sweet, polite, always eager to help in the kitchen. I thought she'd be the one to bring more laughter into our home. And maybe, in some twisted way, she did. Just not the kind I expected. I can still see it so clearly the night everything shattered. I had gone to bed early, not feeling well. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to the faint sound of laughter. Soft, hushed, intimate. I thought maybe it was the television left on, so I got up quietly. And then I saw them. My husband, my daughter-in-law together. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to breathe, unable to move. They didn't even notice me at first. And when they finally did, they didn't even look ashamed. The days that followed were a blur. The betrayal wasn't just in what they had done, it was in how they acted afterward. As if I was the problem, as if I was overreacting. When they told me to leave my own house, it was as if the floor gave way beneath my feet. But that was the moment I decided I wouldn't let them destroy me. I fought, harder than I ever had in my life. I fought for that house. For every brick, every memory, every piece of myself that was inside those walls. And I won. When I stood in those empty rooms after they were gone, I cried. Not because of them, but because I had survived them. And I promised myself that day I would never again let someone else hold the power to break me. The morning after I discovered them together, I sat at the kitchen table for hours, my hands shaking as I gripped my coffee mug. The house felt so loud in its silence, every creak of the floorboards, every tick of the clock echoing like a drum. I could hear them whispering in the other room. But I didn't have the strength to confront them yet. Not then, not while my chest felt like it was caving in. Instead, I packed a small bag and left for a few days. I stayed with an old friend, someone who had known me since I was a girl. When I told her what had happened, she was furious on my behalf. "Don't you dare let them take that house from you," she said. "You and your husband built that life together, it's yours." Those words lit a fire inside me. When I returned, they were sitting in the living room like nothing had happened. She looked smug. He looked tired. And then came the words that changed everything. "This isn't your house anymore. We've decided it's time for you to leave." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It wasn't the kind of laugh that comes from humor. It was sharp. Bitter. The kind of laugh that hides a storm. "Oh, really?" I said. "You've decided. You think you get to decide who lives in this house?" They didn't answer, and that was enough for me. I called my lawyer the next day. It wasn't easy. They tried everything: threats, manipulation, even spreading rumors about me to the neighbors, saying I had lost my mind. But I didn't waver. I gathered every document, every receipt, every scrap of proof that showed this house was legally mine. I sat in that lawyer's office for hours, going over every detail. And when the day of the hearing finally came, I walked into that courthouse with my head held high. They were there too, sitting side by side. She didn't meet my eyes. He did, but only for a moment. The judge listened as we laid everything out. My lawyer spoke with such fire, such conviction, that I almost cried right there. When the ruling came, it was like the air rushed back into my lungs. The house was mine. I drove home in silence that day, tears streaming down my face, not from sadness, but from relief. And then came the hardest part. They were still there when I arrived, still acting as if they owned the place. I walked in, holding the court order in my hand, and placed it on the table. "You have 24 hours, I said quietly. "Take what's yours and get out." She tried to argue, her voice rising, but I didn't let her. "No," I said, my voice steady now. "Not this time. This house has heard enough of your lies, enough of your betrayal. You leave tomorrow, or the sheriff will make you leave." The next day, they were gone. The rooms felt empty, but they were mine again. For weeks, I walked through every part of that house, touching the walls, running my hands over the furniture, sitting in every room. It was as if I was claiming it all over again, not just the house, but myself. And one sunny afternoon, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, the light streaming through the curtains, and I smiled for the first time in months. I had been betrayed. I had been broken. But I had also rebuilt myself, brick by brick, just like we had once built this house. And that's the thing about betrayal. It can burn you down to ashes, but if you let it, it can also turn you into something stronger. That night, after they tried to tell me to leave, I sat alone in the bedroom I had shared with my husband for 30 years. My fingers traced the old quilt, the one I had sewn back when we were newly married. I could still remember the nights we stayed up late, laughing, dreaming about our future. How had it all turned to this? I closed my eyes, and in that moment, I remembered the day we bought this house. It was a rainy afternoon, and we had stood on the porch, soaked and laughing, signing the papers while the realtor held an umbrella over us. We had been so proud. This house wasn't just for walls, it was our life. Our memories, our struggles, and victories. And now, they thought they could throw me out as if I were a guest. I heard them arguing in the kitchen. "She won't go willingly," she said, her voice sharp. "She will," he muttered. "She always does what's right in the end." That was the moment I realized they still underestimated me. The next morning, I didn't just call a lawyer, I started documenting everything. Every word they said to me, every interaction, every cruel smirk she gave me when he wasn't looking. At dinner that night, I finally spoke. "You know," I said, setting my fork down carefully, "you two make a good pair." She looked at me, startled. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said slowly, "that you deserve each other. And when this is over, you can have each other somewhere else." Her face turned red. "This house belongs to us now. You can't stop us from staying here." "Oh, I can," I said, smiling for the first time in days. "And I will." She stormed off, muttering under her breath, but my husband just stared at me. I saw something flicker in his eyes, maybe fear, maybe guilt, but he didn't speak. When the hearing day came, I wore my best clothes. The same navy blue dress I had worn to my son's wedding. My lawyer met me at the courthouse steps and squeezed my hand. "Don't worry," she said softly. "We have everything we need. Today, we take back your life." Inside, my husband looked pale. She avoided eye contact, fidgeting with her phone. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer laid out the history of the house. Every payment we had made, every legal document with my name on it. Then, my lawyer spoke about what had happened in recent weeks, the affair, the threats, the emotional abuse. When it was their turn to speak, she stood up and tried to play the victim. "She's unstable," she said, pointing at me. "She shouldn't be allowed to live there alone." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Do you have any proof of that?" Her silence was answer enough. When the ruling was announced, I felt my knees go weak. The judge declared the house legally mine and ordered them to vacate within 24 hours. I walked out of that courthouse taller than I had walked in. The next day, after they left, I walked into the house and stood in the living room for a long time. It smelled like her perfume, a sickly sweet scent that made me feel nauseous. So, I opened every window. I spent days airing out the house, scrubbing every surface, washing every curtain. I painted the walls a soft yellow, a color that made the whole place glow with warmth. I donated their furniture, threw out their cheap decorations, and put up family photos again, real family photos, of my children when they were small, of birthdays and Christmas mornings. And as I worked, I found myself smiling more and more. One evening, I sat by the fireplace with a cup of tea, looking around at the home I had rebuilt. It felt alive again, and so did I. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in months. A week after the court order, just when I thought everything was behind me, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to see her standing there, clutching a suitcase. Her hair was messy, her face streaked with tears. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "He left me. I have nowhere else to go." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. She looked so small, so broken. But then I remembered every insult, every cruel laugh, every time she had tried to push me out of the life I had built. You had a home, I said quietly. You had a family. And you threw it all away. Just let me stay for a few nights, she begged. I'll find somewhere else to go. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. No, I said firmly. You don't get to come back here. Not after everything you did. You made your choice. Now live with it. Her face twisted, anger flashing through her tears. You're heartless, she spat. No, I said calmly. I just learned how to protect my peace. And with that, I turned and went back inside, locking the door behind me. I sat back down in my chair, the late afternoon sun streaming through the window, filling the room with golden light. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. This was my house, my life, and no one would take it from me again.